When I think about story, I think about transformation. I think the red thread in my work really is resonance. I was joking with a friend that I call myself a story whisperer, so I can listen to what the material is trying to say and then respond to what I think resonates with that material. And that's across all aspects of how we, make a film. I'm Jericca Cleland. I'm a writer-director, independent. I come from Canada, and I live about half the year in Europe, where I co-own a Danish animation studio. My background is as a cinematographer. I was at Pixar for a long time, and that brought me into an art form that allowed me to blend my love of visual design, my love of dance and music, theater, narrative into a medium that I'm very passionate about. I'm also a teacher, and my main thread in teaching is to enable people to be able to bring the creative process into their own hands. I think my time at Pixar will always remain, it's a little like a childhood, It was my first introduction into film, and it's kind of like where I grew up and where I found myself as a filmmaker. And I think that environment was so special to be in, especially at that time, because there weren't really any limits around the creative process. So it was a very authentic process of pushing story as deeply as possible, pushing the art and craft of animation as deeply as possible, at a time when the medium of computer animation was really, really a baby. It was really just coming into being. So we had a tremendous amount of creative freedom. We were being held to a quality bar that was extremely high. And I was surrounded by collaborators and people who were teaching me that were incredibly talented. So to really grow up in an environment like that, where my vision became so honed, where my sense of intention around communicating story point, was really shaped, and the capacity to be able to put those things together in a really meaningful way, in a powerful way, that's something I'll always be grateful for. One of the phrases that we always used at Pixar was "story is king." And I took that in a really deep way to not just mean that narrative is important, which it is, and that character is important, which it is, but that the entire experience, the entire world that we create around that story, every aspect of it, visually, sound, everything, is relating back to the cohesion, because cohesion matters. Cohesion is how you create an experience that is immersive as possible, by not breaking reality, by not pulling someone out of that experience, and holding them strongly tethered into where they can be in a space to connect emotionally and to have that opportunity to transform. Noerlum is a Danish animation studio. It's located in a small town in Jutland in Denmark. And it's known best, I think, for co-producing the very highly critically acclaimed animation film Song of the Sea, which was Oscar nominated. It came out of an Irish studio called Cartoon Saloon. We co-produced the film. And the other film that we worked on was Long Way North, which was coming out of France and co-produced in Denmark. And both those films gave the studio an identity of working on original content in an artistically extraordinary way. And that's really paved the road for us to be able to do our own content, which is really exciting. My role within the studio is as the chief creative officer. So what that essentially means is the creative director of all projects that go through the studio. It doesn't mean I'm personally directing all of them, but it means that I'm holding the quality bar and the overall creative vision for the company. I also take writing and directing roles, sometimes creative consultant roles on our individual projects. I think what makes me particularly adept at this position is that I'm very gentle and soft when it comes to allowing other people's creativity to blossom. And I think in this role, there's a really big distinction between directing a film, where you need to hold that vision yourself and be very clear and be able to give everyone a strong sense of the direction that something is going. There's a very big difference between that role and being the creative director of a company, where there are a lot of creative visions and a lot of different projects. And what Nurlan really stands for is creative quality, not so much a house style or one way of doing things. So we want creative diversity. We want different media. We want different people working on different kinds of stories. And my ability to find the heart of a story and be able to help that director make what they really want, be as strong as possible, is I think why I fit well into that role. What I love about teaching is seeing the light bulbs go off. It's seeing the inspiration in the eyes of the students as they make the connections for themselves. I teach in a style that's very tool-based. So I give people tools for storytelling, I give them tools for cinematography, I give them tools for visual design. And when I start to see them realize how they can apply those tools to their work, so I'm not looking at someone else's work or doing an exercise that I've given them, but where they can start to express what's deeply inside them and have the tools to do it, that when I see that light go off, I'm super happy about that. I think my story passion and my passion for world building came predominantly from the books that I read when I was little, combined with playing out in the woods in sort of a fantastic way of creating, worlds and stories that I was inhabiting in a make-believe kind of way. The books that influenced me most were Lord of the Rings. I have read those books dozens of times and just found the cohesion and the world so rich and the characters so strong that in many ways some of those characters were more impactful in my life than the real people that I was living with. And I thought, if I could create characters that could impact other people like that could create change, opportunities for change, be role models, be examples, that would be really meaningful for me. So I really came to this passion, I think, by example, through the books that I was reading and the impact that those had on me. People ask me how I balance my professional life and my personal life, because both have a lot going on. And I'm always reminded how people talk about being busy. Everybody's busy. Being busy is kind of a human condition, and I think if we're not busy, we're not really breathing. So for me, being busy is not an excuse. It's not a way to excuse what we do or don't do. Everything comes down to priorities. Everything comes down to intention in life. And you can take your life at the pace that you need. And for me personally, I look for rhythms within my day, within my year, that allow me to focus on overall goals and growth, but also allow me to lift above the sort of frenetic nature of the day-to-day logistics. And that's kept me very focused on and intentional about how I achieve what I want to achieve personally and how I achieve what I need to professionally, and to keep those things in balance. Driving a vision forward comes from a few ingredients. I think first and foremost, it's a lot of tenacity. I think you really have to be able to push and hold, and when everyone else doubts something, you're still going. That's probably 9/10 of it. I think driving the vision forward also means a lot of strategy. It means being able to see where something needs to go and figure out, with all of the problems in the way, the best flow forward. So I really think tenacity and this combination of strategy and being able to hold the vision are the most important things. My relationship between vision and experience design comes in a few places. I think there's the experience that you're designing for the audience, which is one thing. That has to be part of the vision because that's what you're doing it for. So the clarity around what is it that an audience wants or could experience through this, is the essence of what we're trying to create. There's also the experience of making the experience. And the films that I work on are often 3 years or 5 years in length. And so there's a lot about creating a culture and creating the sort of a place where people can maximize their experience in making the experience. And I design that very carefully as well.
You ready? Yeah, rolling.
5, 6, 2.
Mark.
The college gave me a lot of gifts. Two stand out for me particularly. One is the community of people that are ranging from all kinds of industries, but come to the college with such a full sense of self and such a capacity to give me permission to be my full self, to reach for the extraordinary in what I want and in what we can do together. That's a great gift. The other thing being around those people really gave me was the capacity to speak more clearly about what I really want. So for me to make the connection between story and what we do as filmmakers into experience design was already one level that was very interesting. What really rocked me was how much it went the other way, how much experience design helped me define creative vocabulary for and further clarify what I do every day for an audience, and to give me the tools to be able to communicate that much more clearly and to be far more intentional in the experience that an audience has as they look at the film. I am going back to the college this fall, and I'm going because I wouldn't want to miss it. I think what happens there is so extraordinary and so magical and so unpredictable that I'm just excited to be in that place with those people and to allow myself to grow and change as the college shapes us. And I wouldn't want to miss that opportunity. Experience design for me is about creating an intentional structure of time, of environment, of narrative that allows an opportunity for someone to transform in a meaningful way.